How cool is this? There's literally 0 miles on this bike. What's going on today, guys? Back again with another motorcycle review. Big thank you to the fellas up at Ride on Moto in Winchester, Virginia, your authorized KTM dealer, for loaning me out this 2016 KTM 1190 Adventure R. Alright, let's start with a few specs on this bike. It is equipped with a 1195cc V-twin that's pumping out 150 horsepower and 92.2 foot-pounds of torque. That's going through a 6-speed transmission equipped with a slipper clutch, and you're finishing it off with a final drive that's chain drive. When it comes to suspension, you have a 48mm inverted fork on the front from WP, which is fully adjustable. You also have a WP shock on the rear. Those are going to provide you with 8.7 inches of suspension travel and a little over 9 inches of ground clearance. Now, unlike some other KTM models I've reviewed in the past, these are not electronically adjustable. They are manual adjustments, so you're not going to be able to adjust it on the fly. When it comes to brakes, you're outfitted with BREMBO brakes all the way around. You have 320mm disc on the front with 4 piston calipers and a 267mm disc brake on the rear with a 2 piston caliper. When it comes to wheels, this is what makes this bike way different than my Super Adventure. You've got a 21-inch front wheel and you have an 18-inch rear wheel. From the factory, it's outfitted with Continental TKC 80s. These are definitely an off-road oriented tire on this bike with big old knobbies. Okay, so one quick thing on these Continental TKC 80s. These tires off-road are ridiculously awesome. On-road, they're really good, but you need to be careful with them. First off, they're only speed rated to 100 miles an hour, and second, they're not quite as sticky as you're used to with a street tire, and I have spun these things up a few times coming out of corners and had the traction control kick on. So just something to be aware of. If you're going to be doing a lot of off-road riding, these are the tires you want though. Now, even though you don't have an electronic suspension, that doesn't mean you don't have electronics. With ride-by-wire, you do have 4 different drive modes on this bike, which goes from sport, street, rain, and off-road. Off-road and rain are going to cut your horsepower down to 100. It's also going to mean different variations on the traction control and ABS. When it comes to street and sport mode, they're both going to give you the full 150 horsepower. The difference is street is going to be a little bit easier on the throttle response, not quite as abrupt, and also going to be a little bit, the electronics are going to be turned up a little bit when it comes to traction control and ABS as well. Let's touch on ergonomics for just a second. You have a nice upright neutral seating position that you would expect on an adventure bike. You do have a 35-inch seat height, and I'm going to tell you, at 5'10" with a 32-inch inseam, I get the balls of my feet on the ground, but that's about it. You also have 2 different handlebar positions that you can adjust into. You also have 2 different foot peg positions, and you do have an adjustable windshield with 2 different settings on it, but you cannot do it on the fly. It is going to require some tools and take you a couple minutes. Now, while I'm riding it on-road, and you're probably going to be riding it on-road too if you purchase one of these bikes because it is an adventure tour, we got to see what this bike can do off-road. So, let's go.
So, once we got out to North Mountain Paintball to take this thing off-road, the first thing I did was switch it over to off-road mode, which does cut the power back to 100 horsepower, but still gives me plenty of slip when it comes to the traction control. Also went into the ABS mode and switched it from on-road to off-road, which will allow me to lock up the rear while still keeping the ABS on the front, which is great. Made me feel a lot more comfortable on this bike. My buddy Ed was nice enough to take us up on a pretty gnarly trail up the side of the mountain. Only problem was there were some downed trees that were way too high, even for this thing. But maybe Chris Birch could have pulled that off, but not me. I don't have that level of skill. Some things I noticed about this bike. Once you get it off-road, even though it's 518 pounds, it did not feel like it. With 100 horsepower or 150 horsepower if you keep it in one of the other drive modes, man is this thing fast. Suspension on it is superb and soaks up all the bumps. And the tires that come on this thing, I would almost consider putting on my 1290 Super Adventure if I wasn't going to do so much touring. Another thing I really like about this bike, the orange crash bars look so cool. But KTM has let me down once again by not having a bash plate underneath, so I had to take it easy today to make sure I didn't hit any rock brakes, because the last thing I wanted to do was bang up the engine on this bike. Ride on Moto was nice enough to let me borrow. But as with my bike, KTM does offer a bash plate for right around the $300 mark, which you can bolt on, or you can check around some aftermarket companies to find the bash plate you think is going to work best for you. Another thing you may notice, this bike does not come with bags on it. However, KTM does offer a few different options when it comes to bags that will slide right over the factory mounting brackets. They also offer a couple of top case options. KTM has been nice enough to put a center stand on this bike from the factory, which is great to have. So this 2016 KTM 1190 Adventure R is a heck of a lot of fun. Thank you Ride on Moto for letting me take this thing out and seriously take it through its paces, both off-road and on-road. Now I gotta go, guys, because I gotta clean this thing back up before I take it back up to them tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, I look forward to you being one, and I'll talk to you again soon.
There you go.